You won't believe this, but Shauni O'Neal just dropped a bombshell that has left everyone in shock. After years of whispers, assumptions, and constant speculation about her life behind the scenes, Shauni is finally speaking out. At 50, she's breaking her silence, and what she's admitting will completely change everything we thought we knew about her. For years, people have seen her as Shaquille O'Neal's ex-wife, but there's so much more to her story, and what she just confessed will have you questioning everything you've believed up until now. Let me tell you, Shauni's life wasn't always as perfect as it appeared from the outside. When you think about Shauni O'Neal, the first thing that usually comes to mind is her high-profile marriage to one of the greatest NBA players of all time, Shaquille O'Neal. Together, they seemed like the perfect power couple, living in the spotlight, raising their children, and attending high-profile events. But behind closed doors, the reality of their marriage was a lot different. Shauni has always been known for her strength, grace, and poise, but what we didn't know was how much she had been hiding beneath that calm exterior. For years, there were whispers about her relationship with Shaq, and fans couldn't help but wonder what really went on behind the scenes. You see, despite the fame and fortune that came with being married to Shaquille O'Neal, Shauni was never content with just being the wife. She was determined to carve out her own identity, to be more than just Shaq's wife in the eyes of the public. She was a businesswoman with ambitions, dreams of success, and independence long before she became known as Mrs. O'Neal. Her journey to create something of her own is part of what makes this story so powerful. From the very beginning, Shauni made it clear that she wasn't going to sit quietly in the shadows of her famous husband. She was a woman with a plan, and it wasn't long before she made a name for herself outside of her marriage. In 2010, Shauni took a major step in her career when she created Basketball Wives, a reality TV show that would forever change the way people viewed women married to or involved with professional athletes. The show was a massive success, drawing millions of viewers and giving Shauni the platform to showcase not just the lives of others, but her own strength and determination. She wasn't just an NBA wife anymore. She was a powerful producer, entrepreneur, and influencer in her own right. Shauni was building an empire, and she was doing it on her own terms. But here's the thing. While Shauni was thriving professionally, her personal life was crumbling. The cracks in her marriage to Shaq had been building for years, and by 2009, those cracks became impossible to ignore. In the public eye, Shaq and Shauni seemed like the perfect couple, but behind the scenes, things were far from perfect. Shaq's fame kept him on the road constantly, traveling for games, endorsements, and events, while Shauni was at home trying to keep the family together. Rumors of infidelity had surrounded Shaq for years, but Shauni, being the private person she was, chose to stay quiet. However, those whispers became louder, and eventually she made the decision to file for divorce. But here's where things take an unexpected turn. The public assumed that the divorce was just another celebrity breakup, the end of a high-profile marriage. But there was so much more to it. Shauni knew that it wasn't just about two people growing apart. There was something deeper, something she wasn't ready to speak about until now. For years, fans had speculated about the real reasons behind her separation from Shaq, but now, at 50, she's finally revealing what so many of us suspected. And trust me, this is where it gets interesting. Shauni's life wasn't just about fame, wealth, and being married to one of the most famous athletes in the world. There was pain, heartbreak, and emotional turmoil that the cameras never captured. Shauni had spent so many years playing the role of the supportive wife, putting on a brave face for the world, all while struggling in silence with the weight of her marriage. As the years went on, it became clear that Shauni had never fully confronted the emotional toll her marriage had taken on her. She had built a life, a career, and an identity outside of Shaq, but there was still something deep inside her that needed healing. And now, after all these years, she's finally ready to face it. So, what is it that Shauni is finally admitting at 50? Well, let's just say that this revelation changes everything. It's something that many of us had suspected for years, but hearing her finally admit it will leave you speechless. Stay with me because in the next part of this story, we're about to dive even deeper into the shocking truth that Shauni has been holding back for so long. Now that we've set the stage, let's dive into what Shauni has been keeping under wraps all these years. As we've seen, Shauni's life was full of challenges, not just because of her marriage to Shaquille O'Neal, but because of what came after the divorce. We all know her as the powerful producer behind Basketball Wives and as a woman who built her own empire, but the truth behind her strength goes deeper than what we see on the surface. It wasn't just about growing her career or staying in the public eye. It was about survival. After the divorce, Shauni was left to raise her children on her own, facing the reality of being a single mother to 6 kids. It wasn't just about managing her career and public image. She had to navigate the complexities of her personal life, balancing the demands of being a mom and a businesswoman. As a mother, Shauni had to deal with the emotional fallout of the divorce, not just for herself, but for her children, who were caught in the middle of a very public breakup. The pain of the split was not only a personal one, but it also affected the family dynamic. Despite having the means to shield her kids from the media frenzy, she couldn't protect them from the hurt, the confusion, or the inevitable changes in their lives. For years, Shauni stayed quiet about the emotional toll the divorce took on her. While the cameras followed her every move, she was careful to keep certain details of her life private. But behind closed doors, Shauni was struggling with more than just the end of her marriage. She was battling feelings of loneliness, frustration, and even resentment. The pressure to stay strong for her family while dealing with the aftermath of a highly public divorce was almost too much to bear. And then there was the matter of Shaquille. Shauni had spent years trying to maintain a friendly relationship with her ex-husband for the sake of their children, but that wasn't always easy. Despite the public image of the co-parenting relationship they had, things weren't always so amicable. Shaq's own life had taken a different path after the divorce, and Shauni couldn't help but feel conflicted about it. The truth is, as much as she wanted to move on and focus on her own growth, there were moments when the past crept up on her. There were emotions that she hadn't fully dealt with, and the unresolved feelings from her marriage didn't just vanish overnight. But what truly took Shauni by surprise was the reaction of the public after her divorce. It was like everyone expected her to simply bounce back, to pick up the pieces and move on as if nothing happened. But the reality was far more complicated. Shauni was dealing with her own internal struggle, trying to reconcile the woman she was before the divorce with the woman she had become afterward. The idea that people expected her to just move on made her feel even more isolated, as if her own emotions didn't matter. There was this pressure to be the strong, independent woman everyone saw on TV, but the truth was, Shauni was still healing, still processing everything she had gone through. As the years went by, Shauni continued to build her brand and her career, but there was always something missing. She had achieved so much, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something was incomplete. She'd been so focused on outward success, on building her empire, that she had neglected her own emotional well-being. It wasn't until much later that she realized she had been running from her own feelings, trying to avoid confronting the deeper pain she'd buried. She kept herself busy, kept her focus on her children and her career, but there was this constant ache that she could never quite shake. In the midst of this, Shauni came to a realization that would change everything. She had spent years working hard to prove herself, to show the world that she was more than just Shaq's ex-wife, But in doing so, she had lost touch with the one thing that mattered most, herself. The woman she had become after the divorce was stronger, more independent, but also more guarded. She was no longer the woman who had relied on her marriage to define her. She was someone else, someone new. But with that transformation came a sense of emptiness, a feeling that she was still trying to fill. And in that emptiness, Shauni began to realize something that would shake her to the core. This realization hit her at a time when she least expected it. Shauni had built a life for herself, but deep down, she knew that there was still a part of her that had been left behind. That's when she started to see the bigger picture. She had spent so much of her life trying to maintain this image of strength, of being the tough woman who could handle anything, but in truth, she had never fully allowed herself to feel vulnerable. And now, at 50, Shauni is finally opening up about the toll that it all took on her. She's not just revealing the painful parts of her life, but she's also admitting that the road to healing hasn't been easy. In fact, it's been a journey of discovery, of learning to embrace both her strength and her vulnerability. This is where the real twist comes in. Shauni's revelation isn't just about her past, it's about what she's doing with her future. Now, at this stage of her life, she's ready to embrace everything she's been through, and she's ready to change the way we all look at her. She's no longer hiding behind the persona of the strong, independent woman who has it all figured out. Instead, she's showing us the truth, the messy, complicated, beautiful truth of what it means to be human. And what she's about to reveal will leave you in awe. As Shauni embraced her new truth, something remarkable began to happen. She wasn't just healing from her past, she was learning to redefine herself, not just as Shaq's ex-wife or the producer of Basketball Wives, but as Shauni O'Neal, a woman in her own right. There was something liberating in the idea of embracing her vulnerabilities, allowing herself to be both strong and sensitive, ambitious and open. She realized that for so long she had been trying to fit into a mold that others had created for her. She was trying to meet the expectations of people who didn't understand the struggles she had faced. But now, she was ready to break free from that mold. One of the first things Shauni did was take a step back from the public spotlight. She had been in the media for so long, always portraying an image of control, of confidence. But behind the scenes, she was struggling, trying to keep it all together while feeling overwhelmed. Shauni realized she needed to take a break to give herself the space to breathe. It was in that space, in the quiet moments when the cameras weren't rolling, that she found clarity. She began to focus on herself, on her mental health, her personal growth, and her relationships. It wasn't about rebuilding her public image. It was about rebuilding herself, the woman she had left behind in the rush of her career and motherhood. But the process wasn't easy. The more Shauni delved into her own feelings, the more she uncovered hidden layers of emotion. For years, she had buried so much of her pain under the weight of her responsibilities. Now, with her guard down, she was confronting things she had long avoided: resentments, regrets, and a deep sense of loss. It wasn't just about her marriage to Shaq, it was about her own journey of self-discovery. She had spent so much time focusing on others, her kids, her career, her public image, that she had neglected her own heart. Now, she was learning how to prioritize herself. One of the most profound realizations Shauni had during this time was how much her sense of identity had been tied to other people. For so long, she had defined herself by her relationships, first with Shaquille and then with her role as a mother and a reality TV star. But now she was realizing that she needed to redefine who she was, independent of those connections. She was no longer the woman who had built her life around others' expectations. She was learning to build her life around her own desires and needs. This process wasn't about rejecting the people she loved or the things she had achieved. It was about accepting that she deserved to put herself first for once. And just as Shauni was embracing this new phase in her life, something even more unexpected began to happen. She began to feel a sense of peace, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. For the first time in a long time, Shauni wasn't constantly fighting against the world. She wasn't chasing approval or trying to meet anyone else's expectations. Instead, she was embracing the freedom of being herself. It was in these moments of self-reflection that she realized how far she had come. She had weathered the storm of her divorce, the pressures of public life, and the challenges of motherhood. And now she was finally standing on solid ground, not because everything was perfect, but because she had accepted that imperfection was part of her story. Shauni's transformation wasn't just personal, it was also professional. As she began to embrace this new sense of self, she found that her work in television began to change as well. She was no longer interested in just creating drama or spectacle. Her focus shifted toward telling real, meaningful stories. Stories that reflected the complexity of women's lives. Stories that spoke to the struggles and triumphs of those who, like her, were working to find balance in a chaotic world. Shauni began to use her platform to empower others, to show them that it was okay to be imperfect, that it was okay to be vulnerable, and that it was okay to put yourself first when needed. In her personal life, Shauni also began to reevaluate her relationships. As she healed, she found herself setting new boundaries, learning how to say no when necessary, and not feeling guilty about it. She realized that true strength didn't come from being able to do everything for everyone. True strength came from knowing when to take a step back and prioritize your own well-being. This shift in mindset allowed Shauni to foster healthier relationships, not just with others, but with herself as well. But despite all the progress she had made, Shauni's journey was far from over. She still had work to do, still had healing to undergo, and still had parts of her past that she needed to confront. Yet, there was a new sense of hope in her life, a belief that she could continue to grow, continue to evolve, and continue to be the woman she was always meant to be. And that was the most powerful realization of all. Shauni's story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. As Shauni continued to evolve, she began to step more boldly into her role as a trailblazer for women in the entertainment industry. Her transformation wasn't just about her personal healing. It was about how she was choosing to use her platform for good. She had seen how reality TV, in particular, often perpetuated shallow, negative stereotypes, and she was determined to change that narrative. She didn't want to just be another star in the spotlight. She wanted to be a voice for change. Shauni began to explore new opportunities beyond Basketball Wives, diving into projects that would give her more creative control and allow her to tell stories that truly mattered. She wanted to be involved in projects that celebrated women's strength and resilience, especially women who often didn't have a voice in mainstream media. She started producing content that wasn't about the drama, but about the complexity of real life, the struggles people face behind closed doors, and the beauty of overcoming those challenges. This wasn't just a career shift, it was a statement. Shauni was done playing by the old rules. But even as she began to take these steps into new ventures, there were moments when Shauni felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. The pressures of being in the public eye, of constantly balancing her career and her personal life, were never far from her mind. There were days when doubt crept in, when she questioned whether she was doing enough, whether she was truly ready to make the impact she dreamed of. And yet, time and time again, Shauni reminded herself that her journey wasn't about perfection. It was about progress. It was about embracing the messy, imperfect process of becoming who she was meant to be. One of the most significant changes came in her personal life. As she found peace within herself, her relationship with her children deepened. Shauni had always been a dedicated mother, but now she was able to approach her role from a place of emotional clarity. She wasn't just the mom, she was Shauni, a woman who was continuing to learn and grow alongside her children. She started to share more of her personal struggles with them, not as a way to burden them, but to show them that even their mother had to fight for the life she wanted. This new openness allowed her children to see her as more than just a provider and protector. They saw her as a real, complex human being, and in turn, it deepened their bond. As Shawnee's story continued to unfold, she began to realize something even deeper: the importance of embracing her flaws. For so long, she had tried to hide the imperfections, the mistakes, the parts of her past that she wasn't proud of. But in embracing those flaws, she was able to let go of the guilt and shame that had held her captive for so long. She understood now that these imperfections were part of what made her strong. They were the lessons she had learned, the experiences that had shaped her, and the reasons why she could now stand tall and confident, knowing that she didn't have to be perfect to be powerful. One of the most profound moments in Shawnee's journey came when she took a step back and truly reflected on how far she had come. She thought about the woman who had once been overwhelmed by the weight of her past, unsure of where she was going or how she would get there. That woman had been driven by the need for approval, by the fear of failure, and by the pressure of living up to others' expectations. But the woman she had become was different. She no longer sought validation from the outside world. She had found it within herself. She had learned to trust her instincts, to follow her heart, and to embrace her own story with all its twists and turns. Looking ahead, Shauni felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer just trying to survive life. She was ready to live it to the fullest. She was committed to helping other women find their voice, to share their stories, and to heal from their own struggles. Shawnee's transformation wasn't just a personal victory, it was a call to action for others to do the same. She wasn't just telling her story for the sake of it, she was telling it to inspire others to reclaim their own narrative, to step into their own power, and to embrace their own flaws and strengths. Shawnee's journey was a reminder that healing is not a straight path. It's a series of steps, each one more difficult than the last, but each one bringing you closer to the person you are meant to be. And for Shauni, that person was no longer defined by her past, her mistakes, or the expectations of others. She had become the woman she had always been inside: strong, resilient, and unapologetically herself. As Shauni looked forward to the future, she knew that her journey wasn't over. There were still challenges ahead, still lessons to be learned, and still moments when she would stumble. But she was no longer afraid. She had found the courage to keep going, to keep evolving, and to keep being the best version of herself. And in doing so, she was showing the world that it's never too late to start again, to rewrite your own story, and to live a life of purpose and passion.